Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful people. So in today's tutorial, we're going to be making a pencil skirt with slit at the back and a crop top, a shawl collar crop top. That is what we're going to be making today. So I have my damask fabric. So some people call it damask, some call it brocade. And I have my lining piece and my zipper as well. So I'm going to set my lining piece aside and my zipper aside, and we're going to start working on our skirt right away. So I'm going to fold my fabric into two. I've done that, and this is going to be our skirt part that we're going to draft here. So I subtracted 2 inches from my length from the waist part, okay, because I'm going to be adding 2 inches band to the waist. So after subtracting, I measured my hip, my knee, and my length as well, and I went ahead to label it. You can see the waist is labeled W, the hip H, the knee K, and the length as L. I also added 1 inch to the length of my fabric as well. Okay, so if you are going to be adding band to your skirt, so ensure to subtract the band and the 2 inches for the band as well, just as I've done. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to divide my hip circumference by 4. Okay, and I am going to mark it. After marking it, I'm going to mark extra 1 inch, and this 1 inch is going to be for our dart allowance. Then I'll add another 2 inches for our sewing allowance. Then over to my hip, I'll divide my hip circumference by 4 as well, and I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to be adding 2 inches allowance to it. Then on my knee, and I'm going to subtract 1 inch from the hip circumference divided by 4. I'll subtract 1 inch from whatever I get, and I will mark. Then I'm going to be adding 1 inch extra for my allowance. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on my length. Okay, so whatever I put on my knee, that is the same thing I'm going to put on my length as well. Okay, so after that, I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect from my waist to my hip to my knee, then to my length. Okay, so after connecting, I'm going to go over to my waist, and I'm going to measure from the folded part my nipple to nipple point divided by 2. Okay, so I'm going to measure my nipple to nipple point divided by 2 there, and I will mark it. Then I will come down by 5 inch. I'll subtract, place my tape subtracting the 2 inches band. Then I'll measure 5 inches down, and I'm going to mark it into a straight line. Then on the both line of that straight line, I'm going to be subtracting 0.5 inches. After that, I will connect to the straight line, and that will make up for the 1 inch I added earlier for that allowance. So once I was done doing that, I'm going to cut it out. Then I'm going to place it on another fabric that is going to be serving as our back part. So I place it on this other fabric, and I marked 1.5 inches away from the folded part, and it's from that 1.5 inches that I place my front skirt. Okay, so as you can see, so I went ahead to also trace all the lines on the back piece as well, the waist, the hip. Then I also measured my underbutt. Okay, from my waist to my underbutt, I measured and marked it. Then my knee line, I traced it. Then my length. Okay, so after marking from my waist to my underbutt, I am going to subtract 1 inch on that line of my underbutt. Then on the waist as well, that is the zipper allowance of my waist, I'm going to subtract 1 inch. So note that the 1.5 inches we set aside at the back here is going to serve as our zipper allowance and as our slit allowance. So after that, I'm going to connect all the both lines to the hip line. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead to take that line straight down to my hem. So if you like, you can just curve it out after the knee. So on the waist side of the back, I'm going to replace that 1 inch I subtracted earlier. Then on the underbutt as well, I am going to be replacing that 1 inch I subtracted earlier. So this is totally optional, especially on the underbutt side. You decide to leave the 1 inch, as in you decide not to replace, okay? Because if you watch my subsequent my other tutorials, my previous tutorial, I don't normally replace when it comes to the underbutt, okay? So after that, I am going to notch the hip side of my back, okay, so that I don't mistake it for the side, okay. So I will take this line, I will take this line down to my hem, okay, because I don't need much allowances. I'm going to be using inseam for my skirt, okay. So after that, I'm going to cut it out, and once I'm done cutting out, I'm going to bring in papers that we're going to be using to draft our shawl collar crop top. So I have this paper here, and it's going to serve as our back piece, okay. We're going to use it to draft our back. So I divided my shoulder to shoulder measurement by 2, and I'm going to mark it on my shoulder, then also on my chest line, and I'll rule it into a straight line. Then I'll come down by 1 inch, then I'll measure my 3 inches neck width, then 1.5 inches neck depth, because this is our back pattern, and I'm going to connect. After connecting, then I also slope my shoulder and connect it with my ruler as well. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to measure what I have in that line. I will divide it into 2 mark. Then I'm going to divide my bust circumference into 4, and I'm going to mark. So after that, I'll connect it, and that becomes our back armhole, okay. So as you can see, I label everything, and it is very important. So after that, I'm going to divide my bust circumference by 4, and I'll take the measurements both on the chest line, bust point, waist, and the length, because it's a crop top. So we use the same bust measurements for all the whole parts, okay. So the reason why I'm drafting on the back first is because we're going to be using the back neckline for our front. So I went ahead to add 1.5 inches allowance to my paper, and I connected. So once I was done doing that, the next I'm going to do is I'm going to measure our neckline, and whatever I get, I'm going to have it in mind while we get another paper for our front. So I have this paper here for our front, and at the upper part I measured 5 inches. I measured 5 inches, and this 5 inches is going to serve as our collar. That is why I've labeled it collar. Then from that 5 inches I measured then my length, okay, my shoulder to my length, and I've gone ahead to label it. So at the front part that is facing me, I also measured 3 inches, okay. So this 3 inches is going to serve as our shawl and also our button allowance. So from my length, I am going to measure where I want my shawl to start, to stop, I mean, and also where I want my button, my first button to stay, okay. So I will mark it, okay. So after marking it, I'm going to measuring my button allowance, which is 2 inches. I will measure it from the length to that point where it's going to stop, and I will mark it. So after marking it, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is to measure my shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2. I'll mark it. My neck width, I am using 3 inches as well. Then my neck depth, I'm using 3 inches. Though that is 3 by 3, which is standard measurement, and I'll connect with my ruler. Then after connecting with my ruler, the next thing I'm going to do is to slope my shoulder by 1 inch. I'm going to mark it, then use my ruler to connect. Then measure my shoulder measurement divided by 2 on the chest line as well. Rule into a straight line, and that is going to form our front armhole, okay. So after connecting my shoulder slope, I am going to be measuring that 4 inches we got from measuring our back neckline. I'm going to measure it on the space where we have our 5 inches. That is the collar space. I'll measure it upward from the shoulder line, okay. Then after measuring it, I want the wideness of my collar to be 4 inches as well. So I'll measure from that point to get my 4 inches, and I'm going to mark. So I'm going to mark it into a straight line first. After that, I'm going to go up by 0.5 inches and connect. By so doing, we have angle 90 on that point. So the connection at that upper point of our collar is going to be on an angle 90, is not going to be straight. Okay, so just watch the way I'm doing it. I know you understand. So after I was done connecting, I measured to ensure that I have that 4 inches, and I'm going to measure from that point to the to another 4 inches as well. So on the place where our neckline is, where our neckline stop, I'm going to connect to the 2 inches allowance of our button. Okay, I'm going to connect it in a V shape. So watch the way I'm doing it, you understand. So after connecting it, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is to form our shawl. Okay, so I'll measure what I have from this point to the upper part, to our upper part of collar, divide into 2, and I'm going to connect from the upper part to that point in a curvy form, and after which I'll connect from that part to the down part as well. So by so doing, we'll have our collar. So ensure to connect the way you want, or give it the shape you want. So the next thing I'm going to do is to divide my armhole line into 2, get the midpoint, then come in by 0.5 inches on that midpoint, then measure my bust circumference divided by 4. I will mark, and I'm going to connect all the points to form our front armhole. And after that, I'm going to measure my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to mark it from the chest line down to the length of my crop top. So after that, I'll connect it into a straight line, and our front part is ready. So on this upper part and the shoulder part, I'm going to be adding joining allowances, so ensure to do that as well. And I'm also going to smoothen the shawl side when I'm cutting on my main fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and cross check my work. After cross checking, I'll cut it out and duplicate on our main fabric as well. So I was done cutting, and as you can see, this is how beautiful our collar is going to look. So I'm trying to fold it to show us how it's going to look when I finally join it on the back piece. Okay, you see that it has come out already. It's looking very fine. So I'll go ahead and duplicate it on my fabric. So I'm going to add all my necessary allowances, so ensure to do that as well when cutting yours. It is very important. Add all your allowances on the upper part of the collar, the shoulder, and the front part of the collar as well. And after cutting on my main fabric, I'm going to cut on my lining piece, and I'm going to be using a lace fabric for the collar side. So this is my fabric. I went ahead to add on all the allowances. So I will take it to my lining piece and cut out as well. So half of my lining piece is going to be my main lining and half is going to be my fabric, my lace fabric, and I'll cut the skirt part as well. So I've gone ahead to cut my lining part for the skirt part, the front skirt and the back skirt, and I also mark my darts allowances on both the front and the back. So the first thing I'm going to do is to sew all my darts on my lining piece separately and on my main fabric separately, and I'm going to join with my body my waist circumference and my hip circumference. I'm going to join the lining of the back separately, as in the lining separately, then the main fabric separately, and I'm going to attach my zipper on the back part of my skirt. Okay, so here I was done joining my skirt separately, joining my lining separately, and sewing my dart as well. So I'm going to bring in the back part, which is the skirt part of my lining. I'll place it on the skirt part of my main fabric, the zipper allowance part, and I'm going to place it front facing front, and I'm going to turn. This is because I'm going to use inseam to finish it up. Okay, so after turning, I'm going to bring in our front part, our crop top part. So on the crop top part, I went ahead to join the shoulder of the front part. Okay, I joined the two shoulders of the front part. Okay, and this is how it's looking like. So you can see my lining, as I noted earlier, that half is going to be my lace fabric and half my main lining. This is because I want the shawl part to be lace, as in to come out, to look, as in to come out as lace. Okay, I know you understand what I'm saying when I am done sewing or during the course of sewing. So I am going to go over to my machine right now, and I'm going to be joining my back neckline and my back shoulder and the front together. So I'm going to match up the shoulder of my back with the shoulder of my front and the neckline as well, and I'm going to sew it. Okay, so this is me sewing it, and after I was done sewing it, this is how it's going to look like. So you can see that our shawl is formed and our collar and everything is looking very fine. Okay, so I went ahead to join the front and the back neck and shoulder. Okay, so I'm going to bring in the front and I'll turn the collar side, the front lining. Okay, and I'll turn the collar side, thereby concealing the rough edges we'll see around there. So once I was done doing that, I'm going to finish up my skirt, attach my sleeve to my top, and attach my band to my skirt as well. Okay, then after that, I'm going to join both sides of my skirt. And in fact, I'm so sorry I had to rush everything because I didn't have much time for this. But if you want to see the detailed tutorial of how to make a shawl collar, please watch my previous tutorial where I made a shawl collar ball dress. That one is very detailed, very detailed, and you understand. So this is the final look. So I'm going to go ahead to attach my invisible button to my crop top. As you can see, this is the look, and I went ahead to conceal everything with inseam and also overlock the sleeve area. So if you have watched at this point and you have not subscribed, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and get notified anytime I post beautiful tutorial like this. Thank you so much for watching. See you next in my next video. Bye.